The courtroom was packed. Rows upon rows of people sat in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the proceedings. The air felt heavy, thick with the anticipation and weight of expectation. The faint hum of the dim overhead lights filled the room, casting a dull, almost eerie glow across the polished wooden benches below. At the front of the room, sitting high on his bench, was Judge Richard Holloway. His fingers drummed impatiently on the desk in front of him, as though already bored with the proceedings. He was an older man, well past 60, with silver hair and deep furrows etched into his face, lines that spoke of many years of scowling at defendants. To him, this was just another case, another face, another name, another person wasting his time. He hadn't even bothered to look up at her yet. Little did he know, today would be different. Today, the person sitting before him wasn't just another defendant, and today his arrogance would cost him everything. Across from him, at the defense table, sat Danielle Carter. Calm, composed, her back straight, her expression unreadable. She wore a sharp, professional navy blue suit, her black hair neatly pulled back into a tight bun. There was something commanding about her presence, an unspoken confidence. But Judge Holloway didn't take notice. To him, she was just another black woman who had gotten herself into trouble, just another stereotype he had long since resigned himself to. His smirk widened as he glanced down at the case file in front of him. He hadn't even heard her speak yet he had already made up his mind. This was going to be an easy one. With a small chuckle, he shook his head in mock disbelief. Well, he mused aloud, clearly enjoying himself, another entitled individual who thinks the law doesn't apply to them. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while the prosecutor, a younger man in his 30s, pursed his lips but said nothing. Danielle didn't flinch. She sat there, silent, unbothered, while Judge Holloway glanced up at her with mock amusement. I assume you're here to claim you were wrongfully arrested? That this is all just some big misunderstanding. More laughter rippled through the courtroom. But Danielle's lips curled into the slightest smile, a smile not of nervousness, but of someone who knew something the rest of them didn't. The prosecutor cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, the defendant, Miss Carter. Judge Holloway cut him off, leaning forward with a self-satisfied smirk. Let's not waste the court's time, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Why don't you tell me why you think you're so special? Danielle exhaled slowly, her voice calm and composed. With all due respect, Your Honor, I'd prefer to stick to facts, rather than opinions. For the briefest moment, Judge Holloway's smirk faltered. He didn't like how she carried herself. Too composed, too unshaken. Most people in her position would have fumbled, stuttered, or begged, but not her. She sat there like she owned the room. Facts, he echoed, mocking her. All right, Miss Carter. Let's hear your facts. Danielle took a deep breath, and in one smooth motion, she reached into the inner pocket of her blazer. The bailiff stiffened instinctively, expecting some sort of reckless behavior. Judge Holloway scoffed, preparing to make a sarcastic comment. But what she pulled out wasn't what he expected. She opened a small black leather case, and in that moment, the entire courtroom fell silent. Inside the case was a golden badge, bold, unmistakable, with the letters engraved across it. Judge Holloway's face drained of color. The prosecutor's pen slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table. A few jurors leaned forward, their eyes wide in disbelief. Danielle placed the badge on the table with the quiet authority of someone laying down a royal flush in poker. My name, she said, her voice steady and clear, is Special Agent Danielle Carter, United States Secret Service. For a moment, Judge Holloway's jaw clenched. He was stunned into silence. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Danielle let the silence linger, allowing everyone in the room to absorb what had just happened. And before we proceed any further, she continued, I think it's important to acknowledge that my arrest was not only unjustified, but also a direct violation of federal law. Judge Holloway swallowed hard, unable to find his voice. Danielle reached into her bag again, pulling out a sealed government document. She slid it across the table toward the bailiff. This, she said, is an official complaint drafted by the Department of Justice. It details the numerous violations committed by the officers who arrested me, including the falsified report that made its way into this courtroom. Judge Holloway gripped the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. He was visibly rattled, his arrogance now replaced by panic. Danielle's voice remained calm, but her words cut deep. "You see, Your Honor," she said, her tone unwavering, "the officers who arrested me never bothered to check my credentials. Instead, they assumed that because of the color of my skin I must have been doing something wrong." The prosecutor's face was a mixture of shock and fear. He flipped through his documents frantically, trying to make sense of how he had missed this crucial detail. Danielle continued, her voice sharp and steady. "I find myself sitting here before a judge who, instead of conducting a fair trial, mocked me before hearing a single piece of evidence." The weight of her words settled heavily over the room. The courtroom was deathly silent. Judge Holloway, once so sure of himself, now looked as if he had aged 10 years in the span of moments. His arrogance had been replaced by a palpable sense of dread. Danielle straightened her blazer, met his gaze directly, and spoke with purpose. "This isn't just about me," she said. "This is about a system that allows people in power to abuse their authority without question. But today, Judge Holloway, you questioned the wrong person." She leaned forward slightly. "And I promise you, this is far from over." The prosecutor jumped up, his voice trembling. "Your Honor, in light of this new information, the prosecution requests that all charges against Miss Carter be immediately dropped." Judge Holloway's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked like he wanted to sink into his chair and disappear. He cleared his throat. "Case dismissed," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The gavel slammed down, but for the first time in his career, it wasn't his authority that silenced the room. Danielle gathered her belongings and walked toward the exit, her steps deliberate and measured. But before she stepped out the door, she paused, turning her head slightly, her voice loud and clear enough for everyone to hear. "Next time," she said, her words slow and deliberate, "think before you laugh." With that, she walked out, leaving behind a room filled with stunned silence. Judge Holloway sat there, pale and humiliated, knowing in that moment that his career was over. The world would hear about this. He had underestimated the wrong person. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.